Hello and welcome to SLP Newsbeat. I am Kirby Allen. SLP Newsbeat brings you news from the St. Lucia Labour Party, its activities, its policies, and information on its candidates. SLP Newsbeat will also bring you commentaries on political issues, historical notes, and other special features. So welcome once again to SLP Newsbeat. And now, the headlines in this, our very first edition. SLP political leader Philip J. Pierre pledges upon taking office the removal of income tax for persons earning up to $4,000 monthly. He made the promise during his contribution to the 2021-2022 budget debate. SLP spokesperson on agriculture Moses Jean-Baptiste blames the government for the collapse of Winfresh, the marketing agency for St. Lucian bananas in the UK. And fishermen of Soufriere receive assistance from SLP candidate for the constituency, Emma Hippolyte. Now, the details of our main stories. The leader of the opposition and political leader of the St. Lucia Labour Party, Philip J. Pierre, has announced that a future Labour Party government will remove income tax for anyone earning up to $4,000 monthly. The announcement was made in the House of Assembly on Friday morning during a brilliant delivery in response to the Prime Minister's budget statement on Tuesday afternoon. Pierre's speech was also notable, as instead of opening the debate for his side as is customary, the SLP leader closed the opposition's contributions. In a dramatic climax to the speech, which has been called an alternate budget, Pierre stunned the nation by announcing the income tax break.
I pledge, Mr. Speaker, that an SLP government will remove income tax on any person earning less than $4,000 per month. So that means that from grade 10 in the civil service will pay no tax under the St. Lucia Labour Party.
The Castries East MP also announced 4 other far-reaching initiatives relating to property tax and educational fees.
The St. Lucia Labour Party will remove the $1.50 excise tax on fuel for fishers in this country. Clear! The St. Lucia Labour Party will remove all facility fees in schools in St. Lucia to make education free. The St. Lucia Labour Party will remove CXC fees for mathematics and English. And the St. Lucia Labour Party will remove property tax on the people of St. Lucia.
Earlier in his speech, Philip Pierre attacked the government for mismanaging the economy, stating out of all countries in the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union, St. Lucia has performed the worst under COVID-19, yet it has borrowed the most. He also defended his record as the parliamentary representative for Castries East. And now, in our first commentary today, George Gordon, a former trade unionist, reflects on Philip J. Pierre's response to the Prime Minister's budget statement.
The Honourable Philip J. Pierre, St. Lucia Labour Party leader and leader of the opposition, could not have been in finer form in his Friday contribution to the budget debate. The usual incessant background nuisance of the member for Castries South East and the customary point of order intrusions by the likes of the member for Canaries Ancillary and the Prime Minister could not break the passion and rhythm of Pierre's delivery, and the body blows he delivered were lethal. PJP, as he is affectionately known by his comrades, spoke from the heart, as only a caring leader who puts his people first can. He spoke of the cancel culture and the disinformation aimed not only at changing the narrative of the real contributions of the representative for East Castries in his constituency, but also the seminal programs of the St. Lucia Labour Party that had transformed the architecture of the St. Lucian community economically, fiscally, but also in education and social infrastructure. It was, however, in the area of the policies of the new Labour administration that his thoughts were clearly and forcefully articulated. While at the same time, flailing the government with an uncanny piquant that can only be delivered by a Calypsonian or the consummate Caribbean politician. At this juncture in the history of our government and processes of governance, when the perception of corruption, particularly as regards the awarding of veritable millions in capital projects and consultancies, is unprecedentedly high, he unequivocally stated that a Labour administration would strengthen the Integrity Commission, that there would be forensic audits of key infrastructural projects, and that those found to be guilty of wrongdoing and malfeasance would be held to account. This should resonate not only with the party base, but the broad sections of the electorate who have looked on in consternation while the Treasury has been plundered for the very visible enrichment of a few. His clear statements regarding issues of policy, which we will expect to see further elaborated in the party program and manifesto, underlines the about turn that the electorate craves at this point. Policies that are not fanciful pie-in-the-sky statements, but that reflect realistic responses to the real social and economic issues that confront the farmer, fisher, minibus operator, professional public servant, local business people at all levels as they confront the challenges of day-to-day living.
That was George Gordon. Still on the 2021-2022 budget debate, the SLP parliamentarians have flayed the government over its handling of the banana industry. Dennery North MP Sean Edward declared that he was shocked by the Prime Minister's statement that his government remained committed to St. Lucia's banana industry.
The statement that surprised me the most in the entire budget address of the Prime Minister was when he said, and I quote, "Our government remains committed to St. Lucia's banana industry." Mr. Speaker, kila modisa akweyon. Moi mwen tobe sorti yon chaise mwen le mwen tan Premier Ministre la di yon souhait. Dat gouvernement flambeau sa la, se yon gouvernement qui ni lantewe fama fig kon en priorité pour gouvernement. Mr. Speaker, everything we have seen in the banana industry, from the time the United Workers' Party assumed office in 2016, has been inimical to the advancement of the industry and the well-being of the average banana farmer in this country. But that commitment he spoke about was not manifested in the presentation. One little paragraph and 4 bullet points. In the front speech, 8 pages, banana was mentioned once, and that is when His Excellency referenced the name of the industry charged with providing oversight for that particular industry. Gouvernement a fait nous croire that yo ni fig kon yo bagay qui c'est une priorité pour yo. Ek me ka di, Mr. Speaker. Tout bagay nou jawe, depuis gouvernement vini en office en 2016 pour actuellement, c'est bagay qui compte développement pharma fig et puis industrie fig en pays cet ici. I did not see the pre-election enthusiasm when the Prime Minister and the Minister for Agriculture won the campaign trail. There was an enthusiasm that characterized their disposition when they spoke about the banana industry. And it wasn't general statements they were making, you know. They were very direct when they told the farmers of St. Lucia that they had plans at an advanced stage to export bananas to France. And Mr. Speaker, 5 years later, you cannot export a bunch of bananas to France. And when I asked him last year to level, through you, Mr. Speaker, with the farmers, level with the farmers, with the exception of the member for Castries South, every single one of us in here, we have held ministerial office. We know what it is like to make pronouncements as ministers. But sometimes programs do not come through. And sometimes due to no fault of ours, So if you had come and you had said to the farmers on the eve of elections that you had a market in France, level with the farmers and say, look, this was the intention, but for circumstances beyond our control, we are not able to carry through. But it is easy for you to sit there and see that as an attack. And this is not personal, Mr. Speaker. I live the experience of the average banana farmer. I see it before me every day. Furniture being repossessed. Utility bills cannot be met. And people who had already left the industry, they went back to cultivate. And the Prime Minister was correct when he said there was an increase in production. Yes, there was an increase in production. But production to where?
Meanwhile, the spokesperson on agriculture and MP for Vieux Fort North, Moses Jean-Baptiste, chided the government for not disclosing to the nation the reality of the collapse of Winfresh, the marketing company for St. Lucian bananas in the UK.
Look at what has happened to Winfresh, Mr. Speaker, with the Minister for Agriculture on the board. And up to now, up to a day like today, Mr. Speaker, up to a day like today, apart from the cursory mention by the Prime Minister, this government has never given a statement to the Parliament on Winfresh. Never. Never. Never, Mr. Speaker. So Winfresh, fini. Winfresh, dissolve, exit toujours, Mr. Speaker. Gouvernement pas encore dit Parlement, rien à les affaires Winfresh. Rien. So la pani pièce figale force, Winfresh fini, exit toujours, ministre agricole, avec Premier ministre là, pas encore dit rien about Winfresh. Ça a fini, Mr. Speaker.
And now, commentary on the Winfresh saga by Ignatius Jean, a former SLP agriculture minister.
Doing nothing is a decision, and there is a cost for doing nothing. And I'm referring here to the demise of Winfresh. Winfresh, Windward Islands Limited, and Winfresh, the subsidiary in the UK. And I must give you a little background of the formation of Winfresh, which was incorporated in 1994 as the Windward Islands Banana Development and Exporting Company Limited, known by the acronym WIBDECO. At that time, the company traded exclusively in bananas from the Windward Islands. In 2009, the company was rebranded Winfresh for two principal reasons. A, its supply base was no longer exclusively the Windward Islands, and B, it needed to diversify its product portfolio in order to remain relevant and stay in the market. On July 27, 2020, we learned from the UK press that Winfresh had been placed into administration. And of course, fortunately, because of the transparency of doing business in the UK and the government of the UK, we were able to access the Winfresh UK Limited annual report and audited financial statements for the period ended December 29, 2018 on the Company House UK Register website. The 2018 report was presented there in January 2020, and it painted a damning picture of the financial health of Winfresh, which is that Winfresh was not in good financial health. And this had absolutely nothing to do with COVID-19. Of course, things went on. There was a bit of trade. And come January 26, 2021, we learned that the administrators for Winfresh had filed for voluntary liquidation in the UK. And a similar thing happened in St. Lucia with the parent company in February 2021. So that Windward Islands had filed to the High Court of St. Lucia for voluntary winding up. So was this the final nail in the coffin of the banana trade? What did the government do to mitigate the collapse of this very vital marketing agency for the banana farmers and other farmers of St. Lucia? Because of course, Winfresh owned 50% of the Geest line, which has been traveling doing the course, a major shipping line for St. Lucia, not only for bananas, for the past 70 years. And to have lost the ripening rooms and now to lose their shareholding in that company so that they can pay off all the creditors is really going to cripple our banana industry. And judging from what was presented by the Prime Minister in his budget presentation this week on April 13th, it doesn't appear there is much hope, because the only thing in there is referring to the Banana Productivity Improvement Project, which he states, notwithstanding the fact that the past year represented one of the most challenging for the banana sector, we continue to focus on building the resilience of banana farmers and their farms with interventions that range from training and gap certification to irrigation, drainage, and land development support through the Banana Productivity Improvement Project. It doesn't say anything about dealing with the marketing of the bananas to the UK and how the farmers are going to be paid. The NFTO have been screaming about not having the resources to continue, and they have applied to the government, and the government has not showed interest. And the only way of accessing government support is that they would have to get the government to take control of their board and the management of the organization. And this is not a proper way for government to do business with a private entity, because there are numerous examples of the government giving support to multitude of other organizations in the private sector in St. Lucia without taking control of their management or even having a stake on their board or having shares in these companies. So it is for there to be consultation with the key stakeholders in the sector and to find ways to be innovative, to be creative, to keep this important sector and the multiplier effect it has in particularly the rural communities of St. Lucia. So that this is the cost of not making a decision. Was there a decision, or was it a calculated decision to do nothing? And so the farmers of St. Lucia are paying the price of doing nothing.
Fishermen of Soufrière have received equipment from SLP candidate for the Soufrière-Fonsey-Jacques constituency, Emma Hippolyte, to assist with their trade. On Thursday night, Ms. Hippolyte was aboard a boat in Soufrière as fishermen deployed a fish aggregating device, or FAD, which she has donated to them.
This is Emma Hippolyte, and I'm reporting on the operation we had on Thursday for the launching of the FAD for the Soufrière fishers. This project was a project that came about when I visited the fishermen at the Fishermen Co-op, and they lamented the fact that they needed help to put a FAD onto the water. So I had conversation with the management of the Soufrière Fishing Cooperative. And then later on, I had the ex-manager, Mr. Alexis Elias Sentence, who became the project coordinator for this. We had Mr. Johannes Sylvester of Barons Drive, Elias Yellow, who actually did all the work with the rope and so on to put the FAD together. And on Thursday, what we had was Captain Lolo, his name I know is Raymond Monrock, who is the owner of the boat Ocean Queen, who actually helped us to launch the FAD. We also had Cletus Fatman Abraham, who was a significant help to us in terms of using his specialized truck to get the 2 anchors from the Fishers Cooperative onto the jetty and then onto the boat. So what we did on Thursday was to coordinate all of this. We sort of started at about 5 in the afternoon, and then we boarded the boats and went about 4 miles out at sea. The operation, we stayed out there with the Ocean Queen, and then the other boat with Mr. Sylvester and his crew. We had about 7 of the SLP women, 7 of us were on board, and 2 of our other SLP brothers. So I think it was an operation that gave us significant joy, seeing the women of labor working with the men at the Fishers of Soufrière to launch this fishing aggregate device. So I'm really hoping that at the end of it all, we had a successful launch. We came back to shore and we got home at about 9 o'clock in the evening. I had a follow-up from Mr. Sylvester on Saturday to say that everything is looking well. He's actually sent me a photo with the red flag of labor flying on that FAD on into the ocean. We have the coordinates that we have to share with SLASPA. We hope that they can share that with the vessels so that they can protect the FAD that we have. We are hoping at the end of it all that our fishers would have a greater catch and that we would make a significant improvement to their productivity and to their returns. I'm really hoping that we can work together with them in the future to launch future FADs in the ocean so that their productivity could be increased even further. I want to thank all the other fishers who worked, both those from Barons Drive and those from the other side, who were on the section on the other side by the Daito, who helped us put it together. It was a huge operation, but it was one that brought us great joy, and at the end of it, we hope great reward to the fishers of Soufrière. Again, St. Lucia Labour Party, putting people first, putting the fishers of Soufrière first. And I want to thank all who supported, who gave us advice, who assisted to making this project a success.
That was Emma Hippolyte, the SLP candidate for Soufrière Foncé Jacques. And now for our first feature, Lest We Forget. Today on Lest We Forget, the DSH sellout.
2 months after the UWP won the 2016 elections, Chasney called a snap press conference in the Prime Minister's office, that was July 29, 2016, to announce the Pearl of the Caribbean project, a grandiose 25-year, $3 billion development plan for Vieux-Fort and the South. A document was signed but not shared with the press. Crucial details of the agreement signed by the Prime Minister and T.O.R. King of DSH were intentionally kept from public scrutiny. The old saying, "What goes on in darkness must come out in light," came true, as a copy of the framework agreement fell into the hands of Richard Fedrick, a former influential UWP minister turned anti-Chasney critic and talk show host. The contents are jaw-dropping, comprising 31 articles, most of them reading as gifts to the foreign party, which is supposed to be an investor coming in with his own money. It is the government and people of St. Lucia who bear all the risks under the DSH framework agreement, which includes about 1,000 acres of land, much of which are leased to the DSH at $1 per acre for 99 years. In addition, DSH can sell, transfer, or lease all but 2 portions of the land development area at market prices, is exempted from income tax, custom duties, and VAT, is dependent on the sale of our passports for at least 90% of the development cost, and authorized to keep funds from passport sales in an escrow account at a bank outside St. Lucia. Last but not least is the buyback clause, which enables the developer to request the government to terminate the agreement and purchase all or any part of the land at the price purchased. It is made clear that, quote, "nothing in this agreement is intended to or shall be construed as establishing or implying a partnership of any kind between the parties. No one can recall any mention of DSH by Chasney during the election campaign, but the SLP soon confirmed that the DSH proposal had originally been submitted during the SLP administration and was under careful consideration because much of the contents made unacceptable demands on the national patrimony. The SLP said it knew better than to use the proposed project as an election tool. Then Prime Minister Dr. Kenny Anthony, in an interview with NBC TV November 11, 2018, said during negotiations with the SLP administration, T.O.R. King was interested in the development of a horse race track and the land around the mangrove. Dr. Anthony stressed at the time, quote, "The areas that Chasney agreed to give T.O.R. King were not part of our negotiations at all." The DSH deal was an early warning sign of the misplaced priorities of Chasney and the UWP cabal in office regarding our country's national assets. It is a deal whose terms St. Lucians will not forget, whether or not they will want to.
The SLPYO, the Labour Party's youth organization, last Wednesday held a Youth Month forum via Zoom, and that focused on young men in politics. The panel consisted of Kenson Casimir, the SLP candidate for Grosley, Jeremiah Norbert, the SLP candidate for Migu North, in addition to Travis Michel and Renard Pierre. On Sunday, 18th May, a second forum on young women in politics featured Jadia Champagne-Emmanuel, Julieta Gonzague, and Nyla Lafontaine. This is SLP Newsbeat, a program of news from the St. Lucia Labour Party, and you are listening to the first edition of the program. In our historical footnote, we go back to the origins of the St. Lucia Labour Party. The St. Lucia Labour Party was born out of two forces pressing for social and political change in St. Lucia and the Caribbean in the 40s to 50s. The first was a trade union movement. Trade unionism came to St. Lucia in 1939 when the St. Lucia Cooperative Workers Union was formed. The driving force behind its formation was Charles Augustine, who later became its second president. R.G.H. Clark was his first. The union grew quickly with membership drawn mainly from the sugar industry and other agricultural workers. Throughout the 1940s, the union pressed for better wages and working conditions for its members, and with the admission of new members to its executive like George Charles, who became the secretary, Martin Jean-Baptiste, Emmanuel Springer, among others, the union became more vibrant. Simultaneously with the growth of trade unionism was a movement for more representative government and adult suffrage in the Caribbean. The system of government in the British Caribbean colonies at the time was Crown Colony government. It comprised of a British governor who presided over a legislative council made up of a handful of elected members and nominated members nominated by the governor. The governor and the nominated members outnumbered the elected members, who themselves were voted into office by a small number of citizens based on a limited franchise. It was only persons with a certain amount of property and income and who could read and write English who were allowed to vote. In 1950, the British government announced that it was granting full adult suffrage in the colonies. Persons who were 21 and over would have the right to vote without the qualifications of property and income and the passing of literacy tests. At the same time, it was announced that the Legislative Council in St. Lucia would have been expanded from a 5 to an 8-member elected body and that the nominated element would be reduced. This was great news for the members of the St. Lucia Cooperative Workers Union, who decided to remove the trade union from politics and form a political party to take advantage of the new system of government. This was the premise upon which the St. Lucia Labour Party was born in October 1950 as the political arm of the trade union movement. The founding members were Messrs. Allen M. Lewis, who was elected first chairman of the party, Martin Jean-Baptiste, Herman B. Collymore, Carl G. de la Corbinière, Clive Compton, J. M. D. Bousquet, James L. Charles, J. Burke King, Horatius Phillip, Roy Skerritt, Thomas James, Charles Augustine, George Charles, and Vernon A. Cooper, who was elected the first secretary of the party. Also invited to the founding meeting were Messrs. Francis J. Carrasco and Louis G. A. McVeigh. And this brings us to the end of our first edition of SLP Newsbeat. Thank you for listening and join us again on Wednesday, 21st April for our next edition. I'm Kirby Allen.